in trying to wrestle my computer into compliance, I almost missed all of sunlight hour. So, oh well. Hopefully it's, doing what I asked it to and not frozen. We'll see when I'm done. Whew. Did I not say what chapter 3 was? Oh, chapter 3 was an apple tree again. Chapter 2 was the stone. Chapter 4 is the rose for Dulcinea. Dulcie. I wonder why. I can't do this in a normal way. I can't just read these books and be normal about them. I think most people are like that, but you're getting to see it. Anyway, let's just read. Chapter 4. Okay, let's move my phone so if it buzzes, it's not as loud. The morning routine was that they would walk together until periods split off, and then Cam would drop Nona off at school and go off to do her own thing, clean the house or do crimes that Nona wasn't allowed to partake in. Clean the house or do crimes. Sounds like fun. Nona liked the walk, but the early morning was as cold as the afternoon was hot, so to keep warm she had to stamp her feet and put her hands in her pockets. The thing that went through my head, I was like, that sounds like California. Okay. They walked alongside all the other workers, the ones who didn't get picked up in the morning in the worker vans. Vans. Why did I say that word in such a weird way? Vans. Or didn't have a job that merited a worker van, or didn't have a job but lived in hope. And they all trudged slowly through the street in clusters, parting only when a truck ground through, the driver leaning on the horn if someone didn't move out of the way quick enough. Nona's breath was misting on the inside of her mask and escaping out its cracks, in ghostly gray puffs by the time they made it to the park, comfortable but not talking. It was always the same route, straight down the street all the way to the gates of the thing that used to be the big park. And then Pierre would say something like, "Let's cut through, it's so smoky." Or she'd say, "Let's not, park's full of mercs." They'd go around. This morning she said, "Let's go through the park, move with the crowd." So Nona took Camilla's hand and moved with the crowd. Did I say move with the crowd the first time? I feel like I didn't. The plants filtered out some of the clinging smoke, and Nona loved to look at the trees and the bristly curving shapes of the shrubs and bushes. I combined much and most. Much of the vegetation had been turfed up, some in an attempt to make a community garden, some of it into shanty houses skulking against the big concrete fence. Another place had been cleared and ineptly concreted over, and they put the cages there. The cages were bone cold, and they'd been almost fully cleaned, but Nona didn't like looking, so she spent her time gazing at the mist of trailing vines on the tree trunks instead. Once they were out of the park and out of the crowd, Pyrrha kissed the top of Nona's head and said, "Be good," like she always said. She did not kiss the top of Camilla's head, but told her, "Good hunting, you two." "Good hunting," echoed Camilla. Pyrrha melted into the crowd in her big steel-toed boots and her over-the-shoulder bag with her helmet and extra batteries for her helmet light and her gloves and her lunch. It was easier now than when Nona had been very new, and Calamity said she had no object permanence. But Nona still always felt a pang watching Pyrrha walk away, commingled with the pride of having Pyrrha, the familiarity of seeing someone and knowing they belong to you. I'm emotional. That makes me emotional. So blue for my personal favorites. Camilla drew her back to the pavement with a guiding hand on the small of her back and said the magic words, "You'll be late for school." Then it was one right turn, one cut through an alley, and one pause as Nona pointed out to Cam a building that had been fine only the other day, and now had a huge hole in it. "They used a very big gun," was Cam's explanation. Before they got buzzed into the school building by the nice lady teacher and went up 2 flights of squeaky linoleum stairs. Camilla always turned down the offer of a warm drink in the tiny staff room and turned it down quicker the more compassionately she was asked. And then she melted away into the street like a gray shadow. Nona often watched her from the window. "Kevin's here already, so he can help you take down the chairs and clean the whiteboards," said the teacher. This was absolute stupidity on the teacher's part, as Nona knew Kevin would not help take down the chairs nor clean the whiteboards, nor do anything but sit on the cushions where the stuffing was leaking out in drifts of off-white beads. Then the teacher said, unexpectedly, "Hot Sauce is here too." Not even the teacher knew Hot Sauce's real name. Nona said, "That's early." Interesting. Is she aware? Or do they really just call a kid Hot Sauce? Yes, I asked her why, but she wouldn't say. "Check on her, won't you?" As though Nona could check on Hot Sauce. I'm worried about her living alone. I've tried to tell her about the sheltered accommodation, but she's too independent. Nona was still laughing over the idea as she went into the classroom and started taking the chairs down off the desks. Kevin was, as she'd predicted, lying flat on one of the cushions doing something social and complex with 2 stuffed rodents. There was Hot Sauce, feline and still next to one of the schoolhouse windows, her burns rippling neatly beneath the electric light when Nona turned it on. "Turn it off," said Hot Sauce, so of course Nona turned it off. "Come here." Nona took the plastic, chlorine-smelling box of whiteboards and the rag and the spray bottle with her, and she squatted down next to Hot Sauce, wetting the rag with the stuff in the spray bottle. Hot Sauce said, "Don't let them see you from the window." "Who's watching?" "Don't know. Green building, 4th floor." Nona was smart enough to catch herself getting up to look, which she privately congratulated herself on. She placed the cleanly scrubbed white square on the threadbare carpet, which also smelled like chlorine, and started on the second. She remembered She remembered about Blood of Eden and all the talking, and it gave her sudden worry. She said, Do you think they're watching me? Oh, do you think they're watching me? At least Hot Sauce took her seriously. She went, which was how you could tell. "Why would they be watching you?" "I don't know. They were here before you, so doubt it." Nona said, "Who are they?" Hot Sauce didn't say anything for the longest time. Then she said, "I'm investigating." Fantastic! Once Hot Sauce said she would do something, all you could do was wait for Hot Sauce to do it. She would not invite you to help or ask your opinion. Hot Sauce's failure to ask anyone's opinion on anything she did was probably the reason she was the unquestioned authority in the school, over and above the teachers. Nona had told Palamides about it, and Palamides had said, "Lead researcher material." Certainly. Now there was nothing for Nona to do but clean off all the whiteboards and lug the box of them over by Kevin, and when invited, examine the silent discourse between the stuffed rodents, which was conveyed by mashing them together. Nona searched for the right words and said, "They're having a baby, aren't they?" And Kevin seemed pleased. That's adorable. By the time the whiteboards were cleaned and all the chairs were taken down and Nona had emptied the bins, most of the other children had streamed into the classroom. They all sat at their tables with Nona at the special table at the back for her, and any of the smallest children who were feeling wet or vulnerable and wanted to sit in her comforting presence. That's cute. This morning, Nona was left alone, which she liked. Hot Sauce had put the wind up her. I haven't really heard that phrase before. Sounds interesting. Sorry, this chair is always very interesting to sit in. It's like an old vintage chair, and I've got like 2 pillows. I've got 2 pillows in it, so the springs don't. Oh my gosh, I'm really sorry about moving the camera so much. My feet keep hitting it, and then I was trying to... Nope. Okay, let's just leave it. You can see my socks in the background. Nobody cares. Okay. Alright. She listened with only one ear to the teacher taking the morning roll call, and she took the whiteboard she was allowed to use and drew squiggles on it with only half her brain. The other half of her brain was plagued with questions. Mood. Who is watching the classroom from the green building? How will Hot Sauce investigate? Then her mind wandered. What will Pyrrha check out for Camilla today? Why is the seat such a nutritious part? What? Is that something she heard? The seat of what is nutritious to what? For some reason I'm thinking of mushrooms, but I don't think you call any part of a mushroom a seat. Who am I? So her drawing wasn't much good, and was further harmed midway through the lesson when the teacher was taking honesty and hot sauce and born in the morning for integers, while the nursery class copied things down off the board. Taking them for integers? Is that a math thing? It's probably a math thing that I don't remember. One of the tinies who didn't like going to the bathroom alone tugged on Nona's sleeve, so she ended up standing in front of the cubicle lost in thought, and then she got distracted looking at herself in the mirror. It was such a relief to be pretty, and to have the braids that Pyrrha had given her look so dark and juicy and glossy. Cam said her hair was drying up, and she had white spots on her nails, but Nona couldn't see it. When the tiny emerged from the toilet, Nona helped it wash its hands and returned promptly to the numbers on the board, and by then the angel had arrived. The angel looked less like an angel than ever that morning. Nona always liked the science teacher's face, which was sort of snub-nosed and thin and crinkly around the eyes, but that morning she was frankly untidy. She was a gallant little person of 40-ish, who gave the impression that she'd learned a lot early in life and discovered late that it was no real good to her or anyone else. This lent her teaching a weightless, secretive feeling, like it was really all for fun at the end of the day. She liked to wear button-up shirts, often with suspenders to hold up the trousers, and a dust jacket to keep her clothes neat walking through the city. But that morning her shirt looked like yesterday's shirt, and her face looked like yesterday's face, careworn, with her freckles fading into the background of her skin. All of the angel was tinted in soft grays and browns, but she had delicious reddish freckles scattered on her cheeks and nose, which added life and vivacity to her face. Not so much today. As Nona led the tiny by hand into the classroom, Hot Sauce had paused on integers to say, "Good morning, sir," which caused a reverberation around the classroom of equally respectful "Good morning, sir, good mornings." But the angel's answering "Good morning, everyone" was distinctly pallid. Hot Sauce noticed that. Nona watched as Hot Sauce never fully returned to integers, but quivered at the front desk with the others, her eyes constantly flicking back to the angel. Nona thought the angel was moving like someone who hadn't slept well. Sometimes Pyrrha went out late at night and came back smelling like alcohol, and Camilla would say nothing at all. But if Palamedes was there, he would say, "Really, Pyrrha?" And Pyrrha would just say, "Really, Sextus?" And then the next morning she'd be walking in that same rumpled, weary fashion, though Nona thought she exaggerated it for effect. Nothing Pyrrha drank could really hurt her. She'd even drunk the contents of a bleach bottle once. When Palamedes had asked why, Pyrrha said she'd realized she wasn't used to being tortured while immortal and wanted to get a head start. And Palamedes said bullshit because he thought Nona had not been listening. What the fuck? Nona wondered if the angel had been drinking too, albeit not bleach, which had given Pyrrha some sensational hiccups. She shared this thought with Hot Sauce and the others at break time after numbers and reading, when they huddled in the corner with their sliced fruit. "What, hungover, you mean?" said Honesty. "Give us your fruit, Nona." "I already promised it to Ruby," said Nona, whose portion was always promised before class started, sometimes days in advance. She's so cute. "Fuck you, Ruby," said Honesty. "You know I want it when it's stone fruit." "You shouldn't always get what you want," said beautiful Ruby. "I never get what I want," said Honesty, inconsolable. "If you swear again, I'll make you go and put your name up on the board," said Nona. Hot Sauce said, "The angel doesn't drink." Born in the Morning wanted to know how Hot Sauce knew. Hot Sauce simply said, "Because I know," which ended that line of questioning. Beautiful Ruby, perhaps buoyed by being that day's fruit recipient, held out cupped hands for the foodstuff in question and said, "Hey, you don't look so well lately, Nona. You look kind of sick." Everyone turned to look at Nona, who writhed beneath this judgment, and they agreed she had not looked well for like weeks. "I do," she said indignantly. "Look at my braids. I look wonderful." Which thankfully replaced their worry with a group effort to squash her vanity. They often took it in turns to squash Nona's vanity, which never worked. Beautiful Ruby, the best looking out of them all, and therefore the authority on looks, had once said, "You got the face of a rat and the body of a dead person." But Nona knew she was beautiful and was complacent about it. Even if they all assured her that she was nothing to write home about, she could say, Who cares? I can't write. And then they had to switch tack and squash her for being proud that she was so goddamn stupid. Nona quite liked this, really. It made her feel like she belonged. They were all proud of her stupidity, in the same way that they were proud of Honesty's rampant crimes, and of Hot Sauce being the most important person in the universe. I love that. Rampant crimes really got me. Is it really rampant crimes or just a lot of lying? Ruby ate all of his stone fruit, and nearly all of Nona's too. Then he magnanimously said, "I'm full. Honesty, you take the last bit. I get fruit at home." Honesty was not overburdened with shame. Lucky boy, he said, and he tossed the fruit up in the air. The rest of them shouted, and caught it in his mouth, which he always did. Honesty had the whitest mouth Nona had ever seen. He chewed, and did not bother to finish chewing before he said, "I don't mind telling you I need the blood sugar. I've got a job after lunch." Born in the Morning scoffed. Real job or honesty job? But Born in the Morning was always a bit of a stickler. "Real job, sunshine, real job. Underground," he added, and tapped his nose mysteriously. Hot Sauce said, "Dangerous." "I know, those tunnels is hell," said Honesty baldly. "But I'll be in a car the whole time, and no shooty. It's just stripping stuff off the pipes again." Beautiful Ruby was impressed. "You should have said. I would have given you half if I'd known." "I'm not a boy who boasts," said Honesty. "God, you're a liar," said Born in the Morning. When the class teacher clapped her hands together and announced, I was just thinking, I literally asked the question about Honesty's crimes, and they told me. She told me. She straight up just told me. She knew. When the class teacher clapped her hands together and announced the hour of science, which meant Nona was about to get the hour of noodle, Hot Sauce dawdled behind. She looked Nona dead in the eye, the ripples of her burns making pretty ridges up and down one cheek, and she said, "You're right." "That I'm beautiful?" said Nona. "No, about the angel. The angel's worried." "Okay," said Nona. "Stay on the grounds today," said Hot Sauce, "when you take noodle." Sorry, I suddenly connected. I didn't connect. I suddenly thought about the seventh house skull that was at the beginning of this chapter, and I was like, their teacher's Dulcinea, even though Dulcinea is dead. Is there anyone from the seventh house we know who's not dead, or is it just like a vibe? Like this chapter has a vibe of the seventh house, or the seventh house is watching them through the windows or something. I have no idea what's going on here. "Stay on the grounds today," said Hot Sauce, "when you take Noodle." It was getting hot. When she took Noodle down the side stairs of the building and went out through a side door to the rubble out back, the heat hit her like a slap. Not as uncomfortable as it would be later, but enough that it wasn't hard to do as Hot Sauce said and keep in the shade with Noodle. He gamely ran a few times around the fence part, all 6 of his legs moving in wonderful concert. But then he tired out and came and sat next to her and panted. Nona shared water with him from a bottle and looked around. Looked up at the next building and listened to the sounds on the road, all the caroling honks and the people calling out to one another. But there was nothing abnormal at all. This was almost worse, because she'd been waiting for it. The most interesting sight was someone lounging in an alleyway opposite the school building, sitting in a busted-up chair next to an overflowing bin, and Nona watched intently, trying to decide if they were dead or not. She decided not dead, because they were wearing quite a good jacket and a face guard, and nobody was coming around surreptitiously trying to take either. She was somewhat disconsolate and cross by the time the main teacher called out to her from the second-story window, but she cheered up at the handover. Noodle licked her hand, and the angel said, "Nona, you are a little lifesaver." And there was the pleasant, after-class dopey feeling of half the children preparing for lunch and sleep. The blinds were being drawn, and a couple of parents were there to pick up children who had food and naps elsewhere. But Hot Sauce and her friends were all dragging their mats together, claiming the coolest and darkest corner of the room. When Hot Sauce saw her, she said quietly, "Anything strange?" And Nona reported everything, including the possible body, and Hot Sauce seemed satisfied, even though there was so little to tell. She said, "Okay, nothing. Good work, Nona." And Nona was happy again, and forgot all about the body or anyone watching anything. Oh, I think I might be able to finish day 1. It doesn't look like there's too many pages left. All right, chapter 5 has a 9th house skull. Just a regular 9th house skull without the jaw. No glasses or slashes or anything. Camilla was waiting for her in the vestibule where the coats and the masks in the bathrooms were. When she asked how school had gone, Nona was able to say good with perfect truthfulness. Then they sidled away before the main teacher could try to slip them a pamphlet and look Camilla over for bruises. And they walked home in complete amity on the shadiest side of the street. As they went out of the school building... Sorry. My leg does not like being bent for that long. Let's see if I can stretch it out without knocking at the camera. Okay. Let's fold the other one and then... Oh, I gotta move. I can't sit still. It's both the ADHDer and the bisexual in me. As they went out of the school building, Nona looked quickly in the alleyway for the person she'd seen in the coat and mask. They were gone, which meant either they really had been alive or someone else had gotten to them already. The heat made the backs of Nona's knees blister with sweat, but Cam, unlike Palamides, was always merciless about keeping her going. In a way, she was glad that it was Cam today and not Palamides, because even in his short appearances, Palamides liked to ask probing questions about exactly what the teacher was teaching, and to say things like, "My God, that's how they teach mathematics?" and cluck Cam's tongue in a way that was impossible to answer. Camilla was just quiet and nice and held Nona's hand, and once they got into the building, gave Nona a long drink of ice water from the cooling cupboard. Nona enjoyed the water, but wilted a little at the sight of Camilla removing a carton of more sliced fruit from the cupboard. She and Pura and Palamides had gotten it into their heads a month or so ago that Nona could be tempted with fruit. Which was true then, but not particularly true now. Nona had decided she was fine with having eaten fruit, but not with eating fruit. But she was too cheerful to disappoint Camilla, so they both ate slices of sweating orange melon until it was time to tack up the thick black sheeting on the windows. And then Cam barred the door and gave Nona the bones. Nona sat cross-legged on the floor and chose to arrange them into a sort of snaking spiral, smallest pieces in the center and biggest pieces on the outside, as Camilla sat nearby and sketched what she was doing on a brown sheet of butcher's paper. "Where'd you go?" Nona asked once she had taken time to admire her handiwork. "When I was at school, I mean." The pencil stilled briefly. "Seeing people. About sight see? Keep going. There are some bones left." Nona added a big grayish knobble of bone to the spiral, but with no great interest. It was only a bone. Nice to nibble at. Boring otherwise. Nona, I love you. "Done," she said, then guessed. "People like Crown?" The pencil had been put down. The eyes had shadowed into earthen grays. "Crown," said Palamides pleasantly, "isn't our friend right now. Okay, take that smallest piece there and try rolling it in your fingers. Feel all the little indentations in that scooped out portion." "I love Crown," Nona protested, giving the smallest bone a desultory grope. "Why do you love Crown?" Nona thought about it. "She has lovely hair. And when she hugs you, she smells like cinnamon, and her breasts feel nice, and she's so big and pretty." Palamides looked at her, and then he took the notepad out of Camilla's capacious pockets. Nona despaired. There was always a tick somewhere if she mentioned breasts. The tick for Gideon, I'm guessing. "That's not exactly love as I would classify it," he said. "That's simply a list of things most red-blooded human beings like about Crown. How do you know what cinnamon smells like, Nona?" "Oh, I don't know. I just do. Is your timer on?" "Yes, it's on. Thank you for asking. Why don't you pick out the piece of bone you like best and tell me about it?" She looked at them all. There were long tree-like pieces with branches coming off them, and little wedged pieces and a long smooth piece with a jaggedy end. Nona picked the jaggedy piece and ran her thumb over the prickly splintered end, liking the bright itch. "Am I not allowed to love Crown?" she said. The bright itch. That's weird. I feel like I'm going to put a purple there and not really, need it, but I don't know why. For some reason, I really like that. It's both strange and interesting. I could never stop you from loving anything. I don't have the right. Nobody has the right to tell you who to love or who not to love. And equally, nobody's obliged to love you. If you were forced into loving them, it wouldn't be love. Nona liked that. That's why I love hot sauce and honesty and my friends so much. They don't have to like me, and it was a huge surprise when they liked me, but they do. Being unexpectedly loved is so wonderful or terrible, isn't it? Okay, that makes me emotional. Wonderful, I think, she said. Then she said, well, I still love Crown anyway. She's used to people loving her anyway, said Palamedes, the air of someone not wholly paying a compliment. Do we still like the captain? Even Nona couldn't quite love the captain. I pity the captain to the very depths of my heart and never did like her very much. I pity Crown not at all, and I like her terribly. That's the problem. Why don't you try to make that end smooth? Nona pressed her thumb down hard on the jagged edge of the bone piece. The pad of her thumb began to feel warm. The tiny splinters of bone broke her skin, and a pinprick of red blood bubbled up. Nona stuck her thumb in her mouth. Palamedes carefully drew it away. Good thinking, that's antiseptic, but I can do better, he said. And with fine lines appearing on the side of Camilla's mouth, the minutest fragment of bone popped out from the blood. Then the wound was gone, and the warm feeling with it. Nona said curiously, Does that hurt, Camilla? No, thank God. I'd never do it if it did. Why is it that the blue light in the sky hurts people? Other people, said Nona, but not you and Cam. Yeah, that's interesting, because technically Pyrrha and Nona have lictor bodies, so that kind of makes sense. Ish. Who knows what happens when the necromancer in the lictor body dies and his cavalier takes over? Does she still draw energy from herself? Like an internal battery, but just can't actively do necromancy? Or can she do necromancy too because she's in his body? Who knows? Purple tab, here we are. She had asked this upward of a dozen times, especially lately. But Palamedes had always answered unhesitatingly, no matter how many times she had asked before. She's got the wrong kind of body. She and I can cheat, for now. Draw on me, not her, for the unusual kinds of things that I do. With the downside being that our time is very limited. If I was in her body for too long, I'd hurt her, and the blue light would start to hurt me. But in summary, nothing will hurt Camilla so long as I stick to the time limit. Makes sense? That's interesting, because that's like the opposite. He no longer has his body. Though I suppose if the energy is still there, does it really matter whose body it is? Interesting. He's like a sort of backwards lictor. But some of him must be there in the background enough to keep her from getting hurt. If he was in her body for too long, that would mean that she would lose her passive necromantic powers to heal? Or whatever? That's weird. Does not make very much sense. Whatever. But in summary, nothing will hurt Camilla so long as I stick to the time limit. Make sense? I think so, said Nona, and deciding, yes, that's a relief. I wouldn't want anything to hurt Camilla. I love Camilla. And why do you love Camilla? Nona struggled with this a little. It was like asking why you breathed air. I love the way she moves, she said pitifully. He said, me too. Do you miss seeing her? Dreadfully. But the recordings are nice. Is the blue light going to start hurting Pyrrha, Palamedes? Another question she had begun asking again. Camilla said it was anxiety. What a mood. Palamedes said gently, no, she's immune to the blue light, and it's not going to start hurting her. She's got the right type of body to be hurt by it, but the wrong soul. She was made to be immune to the blue light. So if it's a soul displaced in a body, it's fine, So if it's the Mitch, what the, I'm so confused. Well, obviously he's probably explaining it in a different way for Nona because she doesn't understand the whole electoral process, but still. Whatever. But the wrong soul. She was made to be immune to the blue light. She was made as a lictor or as Pyrrha. Or as God knows what that she is now. So do I have the wrong kind of body or the wrong kind of soul? This was the only question Palamedes ever hesitated on. We don't know. We were worried that the blue light was hurting you when you first came to us, but you're fine. This could mean that you're like Pyrrha, that you're immune because your soul is protecting your body. Her soul, Pyrrha, her soul is protecting her body. Because she's the battery? Okay. I guess a lictor without their battery would be worse than the other way around. Because then they wouldn't be able to do much. But they already absorbed their person. How would you lose that? God knows how any of this works. Even God doesn't know. Only Tamsin. I'm sorry if I say that wrong once again. But there are a lot of factors, Nona. Is that why Blood of Eden don't want me? Oh, they want you, said Palamedes. They want you very badly. Look, are you scared by the conversation Pyrrha and I had this morning? Not really. I mean, I know things are getting worse, she said, wanting to sound worldly. I know I'm not fixed, and we only have a few more months to fix me, and who knows what's going to happen in the meantime. But I'm not scared if we suffer. I like we suffer. Palamedes quirked Cam's eyebrows in the way that meant he was amused. Just because the commander gave you a sweet, the once. It wasn't just that, said Nona. It was sort of that. We Suffer had given her a sweet early on, when she had not been having a good day, and she had said, keep at the mission, Nona. The sweet had been too sweet. She had to apologetically spit it out after about 5 sucks because it got too much. But she'd liked the keep at the mission, Nona. It made her feel full of purpose. In another time and in different circumstances, I would also have liked We Suffer, said Palamedes. Hell, I might have even liked all of the Tesiphon wing. I jinxed myself by saying it's only going to show up once and then immediately forgetting how it was pronounced. It's like Tesiphon. Okay. Right now, though, tidy up the bones. Let's stop for today. They stopped, then started tidying up the bones together, putting them in the false bottom of the big box that was otherwise filled with canned beans. Beans and bones! Sometimes she found herself saying quite meditatively for her, I don't like it when you do the necromancy word. You just said it, said Palamedes, but it feels nice at the same time. It's mixed up. Like when you do that, it makes me sad. Not sad that you did it, but sad that you can do it. Did I say something wrong? Nona added in a rush, seeing Palamedes' face. No, he said gently after a second. I don't understand yet, that's all. Not even little. I have so much to learn in the ways of not understanding. Must be hard for you, right? Warden. That's the word I was like, what's his freaking title? Then he got the expression he only got when he was thinking about doing something. This was the expression that isolated him the most from Camilla's face. Camilla had the same look on her face when she was doing something and when she was thinking about it, which was what made Camilla so hugely unexpected. Hugely unexpected. Before he could do whatever it was, though, the timer bleated in his pocket. Time's up, he said. Give this to Cam for me, will you? And he spread Nona's fingers like he always did, and he quietly kissed the second right-hand knuckle. Nona always paid so much more attention to the lessons of the hand and the mouth than she did to the lessons of the bone and the sword. They were significantly more interesting. With the bone and the sword, she faintly got the impression that she was being read a boring bit out of the newspaper, or one of the 2-for-1 books Pyrrha sometimes bought from the back of somebody's truck. Whenever she was read to from one of these, she was asleep in minutes. But she was good at this, whatever this was. She didn't even know. Nobody would give her the words, and she didn't have them herself. The first time Palamedes had asked her to do it, quite a long time ago, and the first time she had raised Camilla's hand to her mouth and done it, pretty much exactly as Palamides did, making the same shape as his mouth had done, like she did when speaking languages, and touching the same way as his hands had touched. Camilla had looked at her, and then she had gone away to sit in the bath by herself in the dark for almost an hour, even though there hadn't been any water in the bath. Now, when Nona waited for Camilla's eyes to clear, and she lifted up Camilla's hand to press her mouth to it, all Camilla said was thanks, and she almost didn't flinch. I feel like there's something there, and I don't know what it is, but I am feeling emotional about it. I am getting emotions from it. Oh, man. That's interesting. It also it makes me think, like, is it a special kind of kiss? That she was saying she did exactly what his mouth did, or is it just like a Palamides, like, mannerism that she managed to copy exactly? But it's interesting that she seems to be so good at people. And so good at copying people. Like a chameleon. Chapter 6. And it's got the skull of the 6th house. 6 and 6. Pyrrha was working late that evening. They were demolishing a big building that everyone was worried was about to come down and squash all of the surrounding streets flat and go right through the road to the tunnels. The work kept on being stop-start, because people couldn't decide who was responsible for paying the workers, the militia or the old civic government. Down at the local dairy, one of the old men had grumbled that at least with the houses around, you knew who was paying who. And the other old man had said, "Is that all you care about, you shameful old bastard?" And then they realized Nona was there, and to cover up their mutual embarrassment, they'd asked Nona what she thought. She said she didn't mind what happened so long as Pyrrha got paid, because she wanted a birthday present. Then they chucked her beneath the chin and laughed a lot, and Nona didn't know why, because she'd been perfectly sincere. They each gave her a coffee coupon, and she was so excited she nearly dropped the coupons twice on the way home. Now that the last of the heat had died, Camilla was uncapping fresh water to put into the tank so they could have a bath. Nona had her scrub down in front of the sink, hopping cold despite the heat, eager to get into the warm water. The door was cracked a little so she could hear Camilla moving around, sloshing the water around with a stick to make sure there was nothing blocking up the pipe. She said, "Will you read to me?" They were still getting through old news sheets where people wrote in questions about problems they were having, and the editor suggested things they could do. Cute. They were written half in a language Cam could read, and half in one she couldn't. Nona loved these sheets. Nobody in real life would ever have the problems those people in the paper had, and the suggestions were even worse. "Piece of melon gets you 5 minutes," was the reply. "I can eat 2, Nona decided. "That's 10. And when's Pyrrha coming back?" "Bedtime, probably. We won't wait up." Then she shocked Nona deeply by asking, "Nona, would you ever want to leave here?" "What?" "Live on the farm with the warden and me, with Pyrrha, out of the city, away." "No," said Nona, startled and not at all pleased. "I love it here." "Would you love a new home, too, if we were all there?" "Maybe," said Nona, now startled and suspicious. "Is there anything you're not telling me?" It was the first time that Camilla had ever asked that question. It was such an abundantly awful question to ask. The silence drew out between them in a way that made the tips of Nona's ears feel hot. It felt as though it lasted a very long time. Then, "Yes," said Nona faintly. There was another long pause. "Do you promise to tell me or Palamides if you get scared about something, or don't know what to do?" That was more like Camilla. "Sure," Nona said. "Thanks. They appreciate it." The door opened a fraction, and a plastic saucer with 2 slices of melon appeared. Nona began rinsing her soapy arms. A voice cleared outside the door, and the sheet rustled. "Dear Auntie, when my boyfriend and I get into an argument, he goes to the bathroom and then makes me apologize to what?" That is such a weird sentence fragment. What's happening? Nona sat in the bath and ate 1.5 slices of melon, which was 1.5 slices too many, and got about 7 minutes of the letters from people with problems. She laughed a lot. She couldn't read Camilla anything in return, but Camilla liked having baths by herself, so Nona amused herself in the front room, taking strips of paper and folding them into little crinkles and streamers, the way Honesty and Kevin had shown her. Kevin was very good at folding paper into shapes. He had small and nimble fingers. Despite having waited and waited, it was still hot when they both settled down for bed. But there was a breeze and the windows were open, and they were both comfortable with wet hair and lying with no covers on. Nona tried to doze as the water dried on her body, listened to a muffled siren falling and rising somewhere beyond the blackout curtains, but she and Camilla were both fidgeting too much. Camilla with some discipline, stretching her legs out, pointing her toes at the ceiling, Nona trying to get comfortable on her back. She waited for Cam to tell her off for being restless, but eventually Camilla asked, "Should I read another letter?" This was such a nice offer that Nona was pleased and sleepy immediately. I love her. "Cam," she said, snuggling up into her back, "can't you tell me a story instead like you used to? I'll rest my eyes while you talk." "You haven't wanted stories in a while. Said you were too sophisticated." "That was because beautiful Ruby made fun of me when I said what I did to get to sleep," said Nona. That had been early on. It hadn't even been that beautiful Ruby hurt her feelings. It was that the others had shushed him immediately, and Honesty had said in a much louder voice than was necessary, "Shut up, lad. Nona can do kitty things if she wants to," which was a much better way of letting her know she was being an appalling baby. That was a very Gideon turn of phrase for some reason. So I'm gonna put a pink there. Pink was usually my color for anything to do with Gideon and Harrow's relationships. Honestly, this is close enough with how mixed up this whole thing is, and we have no idea what's going on, so it might be. And Hot Sauce had looked at her in a way that she really hadn't liked. Was all Camilla said. "Then, what kind of story?" Nona thought about it. "Tell me the story about how you met me again. Neither you nor Palamides have told me that one in ages." "Okay." Camilla's curt, sweet, low voice took on the tones of recital. "We met you when the warden saved you after you were hurt." Nona supplied. "And it was the first time he showed he could do things like that because he didn't have a body, and you were amazed." And Camilla said, "Who is telling this, me or you?" Nona subsided. Camilla said, "It was the first time. He and I were trying to talk." This probably requires a dark purple tab too, since it seems like we're finally getting some information. "He and I were trying to talk. He was stuck not having a body that talked. At the time we knew you were in trouble. You disappeared. We've been trying to get to you. We found you in Pyrrha. You were hurt. Pyrrha helped us escape from an attack. We lost people, ships, something very important. We got you away and we wanted to keep you. Other people said no, but you didn't know what was happening. You weren't a threat to anyone. Neither was Pyrrha. But not many people believed me or the warden. Many people said you were too dangerous." Nona said, "And everybody paid attention to We Suffer, who said, 'I trust them, they will not betray us.'" "Yes, back then We Suffer trusted us. We Suffer even let Pyrrha live." Pyrrha talked fast. "Then I found a way for the warden to come back. That was a relief. He wanted to evoke the break clause, which means he wanted his family away from the houses. You weren't awake yet. You only woke up for very short periods and you couldn't speak properly. We looked after you. The warden convinced the oversight body, convinced the 6th house, to come with us. We showed them the secret of the installation. We helped them find a stele that would anchor such a big energy transition, which means we helped them move. Then the warden picked 16 people to talk with the Blood of Eden, to discuss the future. You were waking up. You met me for the first time." What? What? Were the 6th house people some of the refugees? Are those the people? Well, then why would Pyrrha be worrying about them and not Palamides? No. Palamides. It was Palamides worrying about them. My gosh, my short-term memory is so shoddy. I suddenly can't remember what I was saying about that. Other than the fact that, Palamides thought they're still worth saving, and Pyrrha thought he was being too optimistic or whatever. There's so much happening! Oh my goodness gracious. Nona said, "What did you think of me?" Knowing the answer, "I thought I didn't know you at all. You were new." Nona always loved this answer unreasonably. The idea that was when Camilla met her. That was her birth. She said, "I don't remember much about back then." "I'm not surprised. We didn't let you meet many people. And we lived here, and I got better, and Pyrrha went out to work, and you taught me how to speak. And then things went wrong." Ooh. That had been a hideous time. Camilla said, "Yes, then things went wrong. The light appeared. We found out Blood of Eden had lied to us, or at least didn't have the power to look after us anymore. That's it." Nona stretched her toes out until her ankles burned. "That was still the kiddie version," she said, faintly accusatory. "I'm more sophisticated, Cam. I can understand more." "Okay, keep in mind I never had to practice an adult version. Can I ask questions?" "Go ahead." "I don't understand why We Suffer hates Pyrrha." "Pyrrha's best friend killed We Suffer's boss." Okay, so We Suffer was under Wake. I mean, this should make sense because they both have weird-ass names. That made sense. "Why did you want to take your families away from the other place?" "We didn't feel we could be there anymore. Not until we really understood what we were doing morally. The warden is our leader, and our families listened to what he had to say. We voted on it, made promises we couldn't keep." Camilla's voice was bitter. Nona was sorry. "If I remember who I am, can't I help to find them?" she said. "That's up to you," said Camilla. "Will your families like me? Will they say, 'Well done, Pyrrha. Well done, Camilla. Well done, Palamedes'?" Camilla smiled audibly. "No," she said. After that, Nona slept, or thought she was sleeping. She lay in the heat, feeling it itch across her body, rolling over to find the cool part of the pillow where Camilla had tucked the frozen blocks in the pillow slit like she did every night. She heard Camilla breathing and felt nearly completely at peace, happy despite everything. Sometimes it was hard not to be happy. Sometimes it was so difficult when everyone else had that hard, hurt look at the corners of their eyes that meant they didn't quite know how to carry on. The men at the dairy, Pyrrha, Palamedes, the nice lady teacher at school, Kevin. When she was 90% asleep, she heard the door very quietly unlatch and close. Then she counted, and at the end of 5 counts there was Pyrrha at the door saying, "Ah, my darling hearts, my sleeping babes, Daddy's own treasures." And Camilla saying without opening her eyes, "Go to bed, I just got her to sleep." Nona fell asleep and was happy. Okay, but Pyrrha calling herself Daddy is fantastic. That's an energy right there that I'm sure Tumblr really appreciates. And I respect that for them. Not for me, but I respect that. John 5:20. In the dream she said, "But that's it? They shut you down, it was over?" They were standing at the top of a hill now. She couldn't remember moving. At the bottom of the hill there was a great swept-out plain, as though somebody had cupped their hand over the landscape and scraped everything to one side, like filth off a table. It was clean to their left and to their right, where the invisible hand had stopped. Where the invisible hand had stopped was a huge confusion of rubble and metal and foliage. Trees and structures, stones and metal. He sat down on a patch of brown grass and laughed a little and said, "Beloved, it wouldn't be over. It wouldn't begin for a year." He said it was the thin end of the wedge. He said that official paperwork claimed they decided to pull back and think things through again, but he'd always known they'd reinvested in something else. He just didn't know what. He said when the leak happened, everyone suddenly knew everything. Their project was all over the news. Everyone had a fucking opinion. Then it suddenly dawned on the general public this was the next move. We really were in the end game. You weren't going to last the distance, and everyone started to panic. The economy tanked. It hadn't been in great shape to begin with. I am going to run out of my purple information tabs, because they are giving me information in bits and bits and pieces, and it makes no sense, but I tab it just in case because I know I'm going to want to come back to it. Or maybe I'll just reread it and hopefully then it'll make more sense later. Honestly, I might reread it with the audiobook because I really love the audiobooks. If I can get it. I'm sure there's like 35 people waiting for it on hold in the library. Anyway. A was panicking because our kill fee money was suddenly worth nothing. And what if the banks crash and that nothing went too? What? Our kill fee money was suddenly worth nothing, and what if the banks crashed and that nothing went too? Went where? What? What's happening? C was panicking because with the project over, she was getting recalled to England and didn't want to go. She'd got N and didn't want to leave her. Who's N? Refused to admit they were dating even though we all knew. Is C Kitharea? M was panicking because we had a health board and somebody from Energy coming to talk about shutdown. And what the hell were we going to do with all the dead bodies we'd collected to test on? Wait. Were they inventing necromancy? He said, it was the last one that was getting to me. I knew all those bodies by name. Funny to say, but they were my mates, you know? I'd worked on them for such a long time, and they'd given us so much. And now they were going to get dumped in some concrete skip because after what we'd done to them, they couldn't be cremated or buried safely. I hated that. Couldn't be cremated. What did you do to them? Irradiate them? Is radiation how you got to necromancy? I didn't have to worry about the public or the media. We had a pet cop, P. She'd made Pyrrha. Is that Pyrrha? She'd made detective by that point, was going on to big things in the MOD. The fuck is MOD? Knew G from way back, and G and I were both hometown boys, so P kept the heat down for us. We got a lot of attention at first because they wanted someone to blame, wanted to rubberneck, wanted to write up think pieces about it, wanted to know who we were. M and A could have walked into new jobs in a heartbeat, but I was irradiated. I'd never work in the industry again. What industry? What's happening? I sure as hell wouldn't be allowed to work on anything else to do with you. With you? What? Is he talking to Electo? I've been wondering what the heck happened to her, Electo. Like, why did Wake want to get into the tomb in the first place? Okay, she used Gideon to get into the tomb. Then what? What happened? What did she do? At first also I was like, how did Harrow get into the tomb then? But then we got that one flashback from Gideon where she was like, you clawed my face open. And then that's probably when you went to go open the tomb. So she had her genetic material. So many questions, so little answers. I told M and A to go and that I'd shut up shop, but they wouldn't leave me. None of them left me. He said it was such pandemonium. I mean, the worst was yet to come, but it was like the crisis had been announced all over again. Like you'd sprung this on us out of nowhere. Like you'd never said you were sick. What is happening? I'm so confused. We went through the same old shitty questions of what to do. What about the Mars installation? What about the fusion batteries? We've still only got room for 5 million tops up there, guys. Tops up there, guys. And we haven't worked out how to feed them either. What about the Kuiper platform? I don't know how to pronounce Kuiper. Whatever. What about Uranus? What about the shell we're building there? And it's like, we knew that was going to be slow 20 years ago. Before we knew we were fucked. The only way out was to dump the population on an exoplanet. The cryocans would have let us get everyone to tall Cetai in my lifetime. Then we could work backward from there. It was about giving you breathing room, you know? I knew I wouldn't live to see you get well, but I wanted to stop you hurting. You who? The planet? The sun? Is Electo the spirit of a planet inhabiting a body? Yeah, I remember someone being like, there's a theory that Electo's a resurrection beast or something. Whatever she is, she's not human. So I can't, I feel like he's talking to her. I feel like there's some weird shit going on with the three of them. Because it's, now I'm remembering someone made another interesting theory that perfect lictorhood had to involve 3 people. Because they were like Palamedes, Dulcinea, and Camilla. And they thought maybe Harrow, Gideon, and Alecto would somehow... I think Alecto is tied into this I know she is somehow. The next book is called Alecto. Or whatever, even though I thought that was the 3rd one. Oops. Dang it. I'm just a mess, okay? I'm confused. And I want to understand things, and sometimes I feel like there's too much information and my brain can't put it all together to form yeah, Alecto is still there, even though someone called it a trilogy. I don't know. I'm suddenly second guessing everything that I remember. Oops, sorry. I'm sorry. I'm also trying a new medication, which has sort of been helping, but it has also kind of been, you know, also obviously getting side effects, so I feel like my brain is a little muzzy, a little maybe overdoing things. Anyway, he said I wasn't panicking with the rest of them. I know I should have been, but I wasn't. I kept working on the plan even without backing, kept refining the canister mixture. It was like I knew more every day about how it should work, what the little niggles were. John, the fuck is a niggle? I was having 6 breakthroughs a day. They'd all expected me to go nuts. A kept saying, "Are you sleeping? Are you okay? Are you taking any class A's? You know you can tell me." But I wasn't taking anything. I was sleeping like a baby. I was looking at those guys on the slab and something in me was like, I know you. I know this. He said, told Em that. Huge mistake. She was like, oh my God, you're drinking, aren't you? You're on amphetamines. You are on coke. You are on amphetamines and coke. I was like, yeah, Coke Zero. She didn't laugh. I laughed. He said, I guess I've always thought any pun was automatically funny. Yeah, we can tell that, John. But with your nun houses with left grief. Also, that's not even a pun. After a while, he said, problem was the electricity guys were all, look, we sympathize, but we cannot keep diverting 3% of this country's electricity to your vats. He was a nice guy. The health board man was a dickhead, though. Kept saying we had to dispose of the bodies on site, had to do it now. Could we liquefy? Could we put the fluid in a concrete chamber and bury it? You would have fucking loved that. I was like, piss off, those are our friends. We need to treat them with respect. I mean, I guess it was me saying stuff like that, which was worrying A. G kept saying I was fine, but he was the voice in the wilderness. That's a weird way to put it, but I like it. G always thought anything I did or said was fine. Not necessarily right, but fine. And then out of nowhere they said, no more prep. We're shutting you guys down tonight, lights off. And we knew that out of the cans, the bodies would degrade immediately. We only had the demo cans, the mass-produced ones that were made in a Five Eyes factory in Shenzhen. No question of getting any of the corpses that far. I had to let them go. I went around to everyone, talking to my favorites. I knew it was weird having favorites, but let's bloody face it, I'd gone weird. Not even saying goodbye, just saying, it'll be fine. Hang on for me. Kia kaha kia maya. I do not know what that means, but I want to know. Is John an islander or something? Was that weird of me? I'm sorry. But that sounded really familiar, and it sounds like... Tell me what it means. Maori. They are. It's Maori words. Be strong, be brave, and be steadfast. Kia kaha, kia mai, kia mana wanui. I feel like part of that was in Wake's name. Was it? There was some nonsense in there, possibly. Possibly nonsense, possibly not. I'm really sorry if I've said anything dumb. My brain's not working the way it usually does. I'm just trying to make connections and sometimes not making the right ones. Now I'm anxious. Anyway, I can always check Wake's name later, but it's freaking ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Anyway, okay, I'm almost done. C made appeal after appeal after appeal. No dice. They shut down our power to the vats one night, 1 minute after 6. We were all there waiting when they turned them off. He fell silent and she prompted. What happened, Lord? He smiled out over the hillside, over the flat plains and the twisted rubbish. A strange, fleeting thing with teeth. Oh, I like that. Most of the bodies got the melt like we thought they would, he said. Damaged beyond repair. Their brains liquefied almost immediately, but Harrow, the ones I touched, all the ones I loved, they stayed incorrupted. What that I have read, it might have been a fan fiction. There's something that I have read that had chapter after chapter, like it was switched off point of views, and one of them I think was like a dream, and it kept cutting off in the middle of words and sentences and continuing in the next chapter. My brain is telling me it was a Narnia fan fiction. Might be. Who knows? I don't remember. Either way, I should probably go eat dinner. And we are up to day 2. And I am very confused.